Hello, this is Greg the Rural Economist, and this is another, well, they're not going to be a special edition anymore, but this is another video on, basically on around the homestead. Last time we talked about GMOs versus hybrid versus open pollinated versus heirloom seeds. Today we're actually going to be talking about microclimates. Microclimates is something that's been around forever. I've known people who've used them forever, just didn't know what the heck they were and didn't have a name for them. A microclimate is anything, if you want to use the true definition, it can be anywhere from entire towns to as small as just a few square feet, where there's some factor which causes the climate in that general area to deviate from the rest of the surrounding area, terrain. Now, things that can cause microclimates, especially on a homestead level: hills, low places, shade, buildings, drainage, basically anything that has to do with temperature, sunlight, water, and soil type can create a microclimate. Now, like I said, I've known people who've utilized microclimates forever. When I was growing up, I knew a man that every year he planted 2 gardens. He planted one up on a hill and one down in the bottom. Now, the reason he did that is if it was a really wet year, the one down in the bottom would drown out, but the one up on top of the hill would produce just great. If it was a really dry year, the one up on the hill wouldn't produce a whole lot, but the one down in the bottom would produce, because it was in a low place where the moisture was much higher. And then in a perfect year, he had a bumper crop. He did that every single year until he died. So he was actually utilizing microclimates on his, I think he had about 11-acre spread there. So even though he didn't know what it was, he just knew it was smart. Now, I'm going to talk about some mistakes that I've made with microclimates here on my own little homestead. Now, where I am right now is actually pretty close to the highest point on our little property. But we've got trees to the east and trees to the west. Now, when I first got here, I tried to plant corn in this area. Now, it did get about 6 hours of sunlight or so, but just wasn't enough sunlight to produce corn. Now, tomatoes, peppers, things of that nature, it got just enough sunlight to do really well, but not enough for them to produce to their optimum effect. So in this area now, squash, zucchini, things like that didn't have a problem in this area. But my first couple of years here, I tried to plant my primary garden in this area, and there wasn't enough sunlight. Mistake number 1. Now, due to the constraints of our property, we're fairly limited on where we can put things. So I'm going to talk about our planning going forward and how we're going to do it, and some more mistakes that I've made, but I've got to move this for a second, okay? Now, right here's one of the shady spots that I was talking about. See, I got a mimosa there, I got some pines there, I got this nice blank spot here, I've got a cedar there, big oak here with my heart on it from where I love my lovin's, and some more over here. Now, after researching, there are some things that I can put here that will do really good in this amount of shade and will still produce fruit. I have actually been investigating some hardy kiwi to go in here, and I've kind of ruled that out. What I'm going to go with in here, I think, is low bush blueberry. Now, there's a couple of different reasons I'm going to do this. You see that we got a slight slant here where it goes down to a low spot, but there's a lot of pine in here. Apparently, based on my research, low bush blueberries do really well under pines and in a more acidic soil. So this is one place that I'm looking at putting in blueberries. Admitted mistake number 2. Now, a good buddy of mine gave me a fig tree a couple of years ago. Yes, I said a couple of years ago. And I placed it here. It has died back every year due to the cold. Now, what I didn't take into consideration is this is actually one of the lowest points in our property. So cool air tends to pool up here, and it stays cooler in this area than anywhere else on the property for longer because it pools up. This has been a major mistake. It is only 4 feet away from the coldest place on my property, which is the lowest point on my property. Now, I can enhance this by creating a heat sink. Now, what I'm going to do this year is I'm going to get some dark colored rock, and I'm going to put it all around the base here. That way the sunlight during the winter can heat up those rocks, and then it can protect this fig tree during the night when it gets the coldest. That creates a heat sink. So actually I am going to be modifying this little microculture in the hopes of being able to save this fig exactly where it is. So you can tweak microcultures. Now, it would have been much better had I planted it further up on the hill where the cool air could roll away, but I honestly didn't think about it, so that's where we are right now. On average, where we are, we get about 56 inches of rain a year. Generally, we don't have to worry about rain, but there are a couple of months of the year where we have to worry about rain more than others. The hill tends to dry out more than the low places. The shade, all of these things. Now, your structures also create microclimates. If you're in the northern hemisphere, then on the south side of your building, especially if it has an east-west orientation, then there's going to be a lot more solar activity, depending upon the trees, of course, for the south-facing side of your building. So that's a place where you can put stuff that can't handle frost as much and actually extend your harvest. Those are things that you should take into consideration. If you haven't thought about those, then you're probably going to make some of the same mistakes I did. A couple of years ago, I had some friends that asked me, they were putting a small garden kind of in an enclave, a recess of their house, and they weren't getting enough sunlight, and they still wanted to receive a harvest that particular year. So what we wound up doing is we wound up coating cardboard with aluminum foil to increase the reflective sunlight when it wasn't there. It helped. It wasn't a perfect solution at all. When you're planting your garden, when you're planting your fruit trees or your vines or whatever you're planning on putting in, if you don't look at the solar aspect, if you don't look at your microclimates, then you're going to make some of the same mistakes I did. I hope that helped you. I hope this is something that you appreciate, and we're going to keep on going with some of these just like we're doing the rest, and we're going to try to help some folks out. Step by step, we're bringing rural back. Bye-bye.